Woolsey?
Oh, Carl.
You could at least turn the lights on.
Oh, I thought I had. But this window here must let some light in.
Hey, don't beat yourself up over it, mate. Games have had me sitting alone in the dark for years. Darkness in video games really is the shit in my cereal. It seems with each game I play, being able to actually see the game I'm playing is more of a lucky bonus than an expected feature. I don't know how this happens with so many extremely talented artists labouring over these games for us, but so many games fail to execute darkness correctly, and it's turned into such a major turn-off for me. So today, I'm hoping to enlighten you on this lighting issue as we crash course our way through what these games are doing wrong, and how correctly implementing darkness can immediately transform the quality of a game. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about dark games, my mind jumps straight to the horror genre. It's not really my forte, but I can definitely see the appeal. The lack of visibility in these environments can be a very key ingredient to immersing a player into these experiences, and I'm fine with that, honestly. Dimming the lights can help create a chilling environment quite easily, but for me, that's the problem I have with darkness: lack of visibility. I've stumbled across countless games in my time that don't allow you to see what you're doing, and it ruins them for me. Games like Dying Light, for instance. People always bang on about this game being great, but I just can't see it because the light isn't dying, it's already fucking dead. The big gimmick of this game is during the night, enemies are much stronger, but along with that comes what is essentially a black screen. You cannot see anything. I'm constantly getting stuck on things or accidentally running into zombies, and while you do have a flashlight, it blinds the middle of the screen with ridiculous levels of contrast that I start to get tunnel vision. And it alerts enemies to your position, so you're left with this conflict of either fighting more challenging enemies or fumbling around in the dark. Funny enough, I can actually name another zombie game with the same problem: The Walking Dead Survival Instinct. Even though I'm not a fan of Dying Light, I'd take that any day over this piece of shit. Can't believe I'm talking about this twice in the same year. But it suffers from the same problem. A lot of nighttime scenes and dark locations where you can't see shit. That big bright spotlight is back as well, but the tunnel vision is even more unbearable here. But this problem isn't just limited to survival horror games, no. Even the colourful and cartoony platformers struggle with it. Donkey Kong Country opens with a nice sunny level to get you started, and then immediately throws you off the deep end into a damn cyclone. The level is much darker, and with all the rain on screen, it's hard to see what's going on, and it's overly extreme for this early in the game. Given the industry-changing graphics on display here though, I think it's clear that this was just to show off at the time, and I'm not saying it looks bad, I'm just not a fan. Donkey Kong had trouble with visibility again on the N64, with a lot of massive dark levels that, given the extensive periods of time you'll be spending in each, really start to drain your energy after not too long. With this game, it seems even when it's trying to light up certain areas to show you the way, it's still incredibly dark, and with the low resolution and low poly graphics, it all just blends into itself. It's very important for navigational purposes, as well as just looking nice, that everything is illuminated correctly so we can see what we're doing. I enjoy playing a lot of simulator games, but never would I even consider playing these with a night cycle, because you can't see anything. Sure, it looks very pretty, but I can't efficiently build anything like this because I can't see what's going on. Everyone's immediate response to this is always, just pause the game, go into options and crank the brightness up, or do the same with your TV. But that doesn't help at all, and can in some cases make the image look even worse. The big problem with this method is that the brightness is artificial. It's not actually making the game brighter and easier to see, all it's doing is blowing out the colour, making everything look muddy. In more recent generations, games offer a gamma scale from the title screen. This option isn't just blowing everything out, it's adjusting the contrast between the white and black levels to hopefully offer a nice middle ground for the situation. But regardless of either option, it's not going to fix anything, especially when the game is designed to feature a giant wall of black that fills the entire screen. This is the thing that really irks me. Half the time, it makes me wonder if the TV mysteriously turned itself off. And if you've been around these parts before, you probably know where I'm going with this. Medieval. This game features one of the worst dark levels I've ever played. Presenting the talisman to the witch grants you access to the Ant Caves, what is essentially a treasure hunt through a pitch black maze. The geography of this place is so inconsistent, with no major landmarks to help me keep track of where I'm going. Not that you could see them if there were any. Why does it need to be fogged out like this? Most of the other levels here manage to be creepily dark and look awesome without handicapping the player in the process. There is nothing you can do to make this any less painful, and I hate coming through here. But I do see what they were going for. It reminds me of the Firefly levels in the Crash Bandicoot trilogy, a gimmick that I personally have a soft spot for. So why does it work in Crash, but not in Medieval? The answer is visibility. Lights Out is a dark level, Night Fright is a dark level, and so is Bug Light in Crash 3. But they're not dark at the expense of visibility, that's the key. Despite the shallow field of depth, we can still see obstacles in front of us and the terrain to come, and we don't get that back with Sir Dan in the Ant Caves. Darkness as a gimmick actually shouldn't have anything to do with darkness and visibility. In Crash, it much better represents a time challenge than anything else, as we're forced down a narrow track filled with enemies, trying to get through to the next safe area before we're left in the dark. The punishment for failure is the lack of visibility, but so many games treat the punishment as the gimmick, which is the wrong way to go about it. That brief description of Crash's dark levels reminds me of Alan Wake, which has a very similar concept. Run through a dark and cloudy environment to reach a safe zone. This game is all about light conquering the darkness, using a flashlight and various other means to defend ourselves from these demonic shadow people. Notice how this game manages to be dark without affecting our visibility. We always have the next save spot on our horizon, leading us so we don't get lost. And even though the colours used are quite cold and burnt out, the black figures chasing us still stand out perfectly from the background. And despite the luxury of having all this visibility, the game overall still manages to be very creepy. Darkness as a gimmick should not revolve around lack of visibility. The lack of visibility should be the punishment for failing at the gimmick, be it running out of time or whatever. In Alan Wake, running low on flashlight batteries and trying to conserve them makes you much more vulnerable to attacks and roaming through a blank night. That makes sense. Another good example of this being done correctly is back in Donkey Kong Country with Blackout Basement. The screen constantly flicks the lights on and off. While being in the dark sucks because you can't see anything, it's such a brief amount of time before you get a flash of what's ahead. The goal is to get your timing down and jump while the lights are on to bonk that next enemy when the lights go off. Plus, you're never really left in the dark. If your TV and game are displayed correctly, you should still be able to see the faint markings on the edge of platforms, serving as a constant visual aid for the position of pitfalls. But darkness as a gimmick is still not perfect either. Another level in DKC is Torchlight Trouble. Here, the darkness is treated as the gimmick, and it's not even that dark. We still have full visibility over everything, and we're only punished with the horrendous flash of light every time you change direction. It sucks. And I don't know how many times I've seen a game with some kind of night vision mode. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is quite a dark game naturally, but turning the lights off and forcing me to look through this garbage green filter is repulsive. How about just not making me go through the dark? This can't be good for your eyes. But I don't know what's worse, this or the Virtual Boy vision from Perfect Dark. Same concept, but it's red and black. God, do you think that's a little overboard? I'm actually having a harder time trying to see than I was without it. It's so unnecessary. Even though using it alongside another gimmick can be a good solution if it's executed well, it can still be quite hit or miss, in my experiences anyway. As far as darkness via luminance is concerned, maybe it should just be reserved for horror-related situations. One of the best examples I can think of this to show you is from Uncharted. Normally this series uses the lack of light and visibility for the walking and talking on-rail cutscenes that serve the exploration aspect of these games fairly well. But in the original game towards the end, Nate has to turn on a generator inside an abandoned Nazi bunker. It gets dark quickly and these supernatural mutants start coming after us. It doesn't take long before you find the generator and turning it on brings the visibility back. But it works because you're still freaked out by the hallways preceding it, and the level still manages to be dark, using a lot of reds from alarms and such which bring our visibility back in a jarring way, which stays consistent with the atmosphere of the level. And that brings me to my next point, because this is the part where I think a lot of people, the people playing the games and the people making them, get confused by the fact that darkness doesn't always refer to luminance. Colours can be used to create darkness as well. Take this example from Jak and Daxter. I know I'm referencing a lot of Naughty Dog here, but that's because they do darkness so well. Here in the Spider Caves from Precursor Legacy, you can see everything. Limited visibility just doesn't exist. But it still looks dark, doesn't it? The cold blue and green tones throughout help achieve this look, with the warm flame of lanterns elsewhere to contrast and direct you to what may be a point of interest. This is how darkness in video games should be done, using colour, not luminance. And yes, this level does feature a totally blacked out room, but it's that same timed gimmick from Crash, so it works. I said Medieval generally looks good outside of the ant caves, and that's true, because it uses a lot of dark colours to create creepy environments while maintaining the player's visibility. Over the years, I've had people try to tell me that using this method that works in a cartoony game wouldn't fit so well in a similar genre, like Dark Souls for instance, but I completely disagree. Just because it has the word dark in the title doesn't mean it has to appear washed out in greys, blacks and browns. Castlevania is of a similar genre, and it uses dark visuals so well via colour, and has done for years. Here is another good example from the Croc series. The first game used colour well to create some dark and mystical environments, while the sequel plastered the screen with black fog. It's literally night and day. And speaking of that, I should take the time to talk about open world games with day and night cycles. While the realistic element is nice, I do wish there was an option to turn this off sometimes, because if I had the choice, even if the game pulls off a gorgeous nighttime look, I'd still prefer to play in the daytime. Seeing vast areas coated in blues, blacks, or even greens starts to blend things in together a bit too much for my liking. Keep in mind, I'm not claiming any of these examples look bad at all, but for gameplay purposes, they can lead to some shitty moments. Things like not being able to see enemies in the shadows, and getting lost because the more obvious landmarks are less visible. It's that blurring of colour together that I don't like, and it's strongly related to seeing screens filled with black as a result of low light. Seeing this blurred together, unfortunately, brings me back to the lack of visibility. I need to be able to see what I'm doing, so when games use a limited range of colour in any scenario, day or night, it brings us back to that initial problem. Sly 2 is maybe the worst offender I can think of for this. All the levels just feel like a single tone of colour washed across the screen, and as a result, the already hectic level design is made more confusing with no points of interest standing out. But in comparison, something like Sheepdog and Wolf uses colour correctly. Despite any of these levels appearing in mostly the same range of tones, items and important locations within the level still stand out drastically, so we can keep track of ourselves. This is especially important here as it's a puzzle game. You can't complete the puzzle if you can't see the pieces. And that's what I'm getting at with this whole thing. If I can't see it, I can't play it. I'm surprised more people aren't complaining about not being able to see their favourite games. It's pissed me off for so long now. In the end, I think the least we've all learned from this is that the argument of luminance versus colour for creating good and fun dark levels in games is no competition. I can name plenty of games that use colour to create creepy, scary, cold, and outright gorgeous dark levels, but very few, if any, that use luminance to the same success. And as for darkness as a gimmick, it really shouldn't be a gimmick because the only time a darkness gimmick can work is when it's not the gimmick at all. If that makes any sense. Call me old-fashioned, but I like to be able to see the game I'm playing. Though, on the flip side, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that can appreciate the lack of visibility in most cases, and I'm fine with that. But I want to hear what you think. Do you struggle as I do to get through these dark levels? Or doesn't it bother you? Let me know with a comment down below, followed with liking, subscribing and sharing the video. I'm Square Eyed Jack and I hope you have a great fucking day. Thanks for watching.
Don't step into the light, Jack! Don't step into the light!